Good morning, or maybe it's not good morning actually, whenever you're listening to this podcast. But I have a guest with me today, Bonnie, and it's really funny because we didn't talk about what we were going to wear, and we've both turned up in purple.
I know.
And I bought this particular. I was just saying to Bonnie, I bought this particular top in Australia 20 years ago, and I very, very rarely wear it. Like I think literally about and lo and behold, Bonnie's also turned up in the same color. So
I know.
it's going to be a
Mad,
good
but
day.
there we are. There we are. Yep. Yep. And I almost lost this top as well one time. So
Oh, really? How
through
funny is
yes,
that?
so it's definitely one of my favorites. So
Yeah.
I'm pleased it decided not to get too lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm taking it as a sign that this is going to be a beautiful conversation. So
Great.
I'm going to let Bonnie introduce herself in a second, but I've invited you on today because you're a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. So Bonnie and I are networking friends, and quite often I see Bonnie's post going, "It pisses me off that people think dot dot dot," and I'm like, "Oh, that's probably my opinion of therapy, psychotherapy, counselling." So I've invited you on today so that we can have a really great open conversation about the differences, if there is any.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start by introducing yourself, Bonnie?
Okay, sure. So my name is Bonnie Grotjahn. It's a very crunchy surname, and people often look at it and go, "Oh God, how do I pronounce it?" So I thought I'd better just get that clear and out of the way. I'm a psychotherapist, and I am evolving to specialize in working with people who have experienced some kind of loss. So that could be a health challenge, it could be a relationship issue or breakdown, or a bereavement. I think I'm fascinated by, partly because I've lived through my own losses and had great support around it, and I can see so much amazing potential in these kind of big life events, but they're huge and they're difficult, and yeah, so it's just an area I've been kind of really fascinated in. I think ever since I had a placement in a bereavement service, which is where I started out as a volunteer, like 20, how many years ago? 22? No, is that right? 22 years ago. Yeah, I think that's right. Something like
I'm not
that.
good with math either.
Okay. 20 something years
20
ago.
something.
Yeah. Close enough. Close enough.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I'm really pleased to be here because I think this is yeah, it is a really interesting conversation. And I think, as we delve into it more, I think in my experience, it often depends a lot on who the individual practitioner is, to be
Yes.
honest. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm sure
We'll
we'll
get into that in a
cover that.
second.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't ever script. I don't really plan my podcast. I don't,
Okay.
I might have a couple of questions in mind, but I don't really have anything in mind today. But having listened to you just talking about grief and a loss being not, I think when we instantly think of loss and grief, we think of a bereavement, don't we? So someone passing,
Mm,
someone dying and leaving our unseen world. But I think what's fascinating with grief is we can grieve an unmet expectation, like
totally. Yeah.
uh, you know, a, um, a a medical diagnosis or a relationship breaking down, not, even a friendship. You think you're going to be friends with people forever. And if that friendship, for whatever reason, completes its season, there can be a
Mm,
loss attached to that.
yeah.
And so I coach a lot of people actually on the grief of an unmet expectation, whatever that expectation was.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And I think I'd sometimes use the kind of word about like a dream, a dream,
Yes.
the loss of a dream or something. So
Yes.
that's interesting that you're saying unmet expectation. That's like, oh yeah, that's another way of putting it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I like both actually, but yeah.
Yeah. And also, what I love about grief is that I heard, oh, what's his name? Shazad. I can't remember his name right now. If I think of it,
Mm,
I'll put it in the show notes below. But I'm sure he does positive um intelligence, and it was him that raised my awareness to the fact that grief is the only negative emotion that's really fueled by love. It's
mm,
because we loved
mm,
someone so deeply
hmm.
that we want to experience grief. And I think
Yeah.
that is such a beautiful way of looking at that emotion, because I think a lot of people, especially in England, I know you're originally from America, although you've been in England now for a while,
Yeah.
haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think especially in England, we have this British, oh, shoulders back, head up, must crack on. And I think it's
Exactly.
bollocks. I think that it is the most purest emotion to feel when you've lost someone that you deeply love.
Yeah.
Nothing's gone wrong.
No, no, exactly. And even in the depths of the pain, it can sometimes be a bit of a comfort to kind of go, oh, this really hurts, but it's because of all the love that I had
Yeah.
for this person and can still have.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
there's someone I know who's done an amazing full-length documentary film called, I think is it Love Never Dies? It's, oh, what is it
Yeah.
called? I think it's called that. It's by this couple where there's a psychotherapist, um, Jane Harris, and then her partner, Jimmy Edmonds, who's a photographer. So they've made this film interviewing parents whose children have died.
Right.
It's so moving. I really highly
Yes.
recommend it. And they run a project called the Good Grief Project, which is excellent. They've got retreats and they've got resources online and other forms of support.
Wow.
Anyway, I can't remember how I got onto that, but
Yeah,
just
but I'll find it and put the links down in the show notes. That might, I think I'd be interested to watch that.
yeah. I guess I got onto it because it's like that love is still there.
Yes. Yeah,
It's
that never dies. It
yeah,
doesn't ever die.
yeah.
And like you said, even in those darkest moments, we can hold on to that love,
Mm,
even as painful as those moments are.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so let's get on to the juicy
Okay.
bit.
Okay,
I
right.
mean, not that that wasn't juicy, that was really good, but
Yeah,
I'm curious to hear your definition, I suppose, on the difference between your personal definition on
yeah,
the difference between counseling, therapy, psychotherapy, and then potentially coaching. Because I know what mine is,
right.
I'm not saying that my opinion is right. So I would be really interested to hear, and I don't know a huge much about the difference between therapy and psychotherapy. So tell us all the information, please.
Okay, okay. Well, again, yes, as you say, this is just my kind of view on it. And I do remember some years ago somebody having a joke about, oh, what's the difference between counseling and psychotherapy? And it was like, oh, about £40 an hour or £50 an hour or however you want. It's
Yes.
That's not quite true anymore, but
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of overlap between counseling and psychotherapy, to be
Yeah.
fair, these days.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it's really interesting actually. Now, now that you've asked me that question, it's like, oh yeah, well, how do I think of it? So I tend to think, I mean, okay, I'm making this kind of gesture with my hands, which your viewers won't be able to see, but it is like a bit of a Venn diagram where there's some overlap.
Yeah.
Um, Counseling can tend to be more short term or more particular, like focusing on a certain issue. Um,
Mhm.
and I think it's a yeah, it's really interesting to try to describe, what it is. So it is a process where there's a relationship between the counselor and the client, and through conversations, maybe some exercises, the client can become more aware of all their kind of feelings and thoughts and how those are interconnected in some cases, and to kind of help themselves make sense of something with the
Mm.
counselor's help. Um, and in a way, psychotherapy I don't think of as all that different in a certain way. I mean, a psychotherapy training is longer, there's more personal therapy as a requirement of it. I mean, I find these days it's quite shocking. There are some counseling courses out there that don't require any personal therapy as
Yeah.
part of the training, which I think is personally, I just think is wrong.
Yeah.
You've got to, in my view, you've really got to have that experience of going through it yourself
Mm.
and working on yourself.
Yeah.
As I imagine,
Well,
would
it's
be the same for coaches as well. It's like it's not like being a mechanic. You can't just
yeah. I can remember being really out of a line at one point. So I would say practice what you preach. So
Mm,
I can remember being really out of line in my business at one point because I was like, I'm asking these people to invest in a coach. and I'm not currently investing in a coach. And
Mm,
that to me felt really
yeah,
wrong. I wasn't doing what I was expecting my clients to do. And
yeah,
so I really feel for my integrity and my authenticity and honesty, I I am only ever willing to ask someone to do something I would do. So,
yeah,
and
great.
I think it's the same in any of the sort of the helping professions. I think it does.
Mm,
We are our first client. I believe anyway.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think in my experience, it really helps be in the room with someone and to feel like, okay, well, yes, I've got some skills and experience that they might not have, but on some other level, we're both humans meeting each other
Yes.
in our messinesses and our
Yes.
imperfections and our growths and, aliveness, really. So,
Yes. Oh, I
yeah.
love that way of looking at it. Yeah.
Mm,
Because the way that I describe it, and I know you probably wouldn't use the word pissed off, but I know this is the bit that aggravates you a little bit, is my kind of basic difference is counseling. And I think because I haven't sort of researched or educated myself around the difference between psychotherapy and counseling, but counseling for me is more past based
mm,
and dealing with an event, although that event could be currently happening. I'm not saying it's
mm,
not necessarily way in the past, but it's an event that someone hasn't dealt with effectively. So I think
mm,
counseling is very powerful for dealing with an event, whereas and a bit more past focus. Whereas for me, life coaching is more future based. Right. Okay. That event happened. How are you thinking about it today? And how do you want to think about it moving forward so that we're able to have a release from it?
yeah.
And I know that I've said this to another counselor before, and she sort of got a bit like, no, it's not just past focused. And I
It's,
was like, oh,
yeah.
this is interesting. So there's obviously an education around this somewhere for me as well. But what do you see? Where does psychotherapy sit with that?
Mm.
Is it both?
So, yeah, I mean, I would say both. When you say both, you mean both kind of
Past.
past and future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so, yes. And I think, I mean, for me anyway, this applies to both psychotherapy and counseling. It's again, in how I look at it, it's how the past shows up in the present.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think one of the and again, there are a number of stereotypes about counseling which I don't think are helpful. Like, um, one of them is that, well, once you understand why you do something, like why you have a certain pattern or way of being or behavior, um, then that's it. You'll understand. Oh, right, okay, that just means I can change. But in my experience, that question why, it's it's only of limited use. Like, yes,
Mm.
exploring the why and getting to grips with what happened in the past and what led to that is important. But I think people need more than that. You need to look at the how. Okay, so how am I replicating this now? Like, what does that look like? What does that feel like in my body?
Mm.
What are my thoughts and feelings that happen in those moments, and what can I do differently?
Yes.
So for me, I guess psychotherapy and counseling are both ultimately about change and about getting somewhere different. It doesn't Both of those I don't think necessarily have to be about just processing an event. It can be like, for example, there can be a trauma, whether that's with a little t or a big T. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be a huge event, but um, it can be something developmental, that happened over time and was repeated, like
Mm.
neglect or um, yeah, a certain pattern, something that
Yeah.
somebody experienced over time when they're young.
Yeah.
So ways of helping people see see that, but then also form something new.
Mm. Yeah.
That's ultimately, I think that's where counseling and psychotherapy and coaching really all kind of have the same goal. It's like
Yes.
we're all working so that the person can be a better, higher version of themselves, like really
Yes.
fulfilling their potential more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, I agree.
yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily, like when we say trauma, I mean, obviously there are very obvious traumas that people that people experience in their lives.
Mm.
And I wouldn't say that I'm not a trauma coach, so I that wouldn't be my area of expertise. But when we look at trauma, it could be something as really sounds insignificant and sounds almost innocent as, oh, but they're shy. So when you're a child and you
Yeah.
hear the adult saying, oh, but they're shy, that just repeatedly hearing that then becomes an identity as an adult, which actually isn't ever true. Like, what does shy even mean? So
Yes.
even when you
Yes.
start something so that you wouldn't look at that and go, oh, that's traumatic, but it is a developmental
That's it.
shift, isn't it? So it had an effect on how we then became the adult that we became
Yeah.
without anybody even saying to us, hey, do you know you've actually got a choice? You don't have to take on that label anymore. That may not be true for you now. Um, and so it's fascinating, isn't it, when you uncover those for people? And when we talk about the past, it doesn't have to be this big, huge event. It could be something really seemingly innocent.
Yes, yes, and you're right that for some reason, I mean, obviously, when we're young, we absorb.
Yeah.
We're like sponges sometimes. I mean, yeah, we're dependent on these big adults, so we have to kind of, on some level, trust them. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, a lot of that stuff gets internalized. And
Yeah. And
you're
my
right.
understanding, my basic understanding of the brain is it's the proof, and I would be interested to hear your explanation on
Mm,
this because with your training, you've probably done more um, training around the brain and have more knowledge around the brain functions. But for me, like from my understanding, it's the prefrontal cortex that enables us to question, challenge beliefs, and think beyond
mm,
ourselves and choose rationally. But that part of our brain isn't developed in children. So whatever we hear we take as truth, which can be good positively as well, and magical around Christmas and when we lose our first,
mm.
the when our teeth drop out. I don't want to, for anybody that might be listening with children, but I don't want to spoil anything. But it can be magical to have that naivety. I don't mean naivety in a judgment term, but hearing what you hear and just believing it to be true can be very magical, but not when it could cause a limiting
Yeah,
behavior.
yeah, yeah.
Excuse me, I need to blow my nose. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, I apologize. It's that time of year. Well, I feel it's always my time of year.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the only other thing that I feel sometimes when it comes to counseling, again, I'd be really interested to hear your perspective on this, is that what I teach in my method of coaching is that the situation is totally neutral until your thoughts make it mean something, and it's
Okay.
those thoughts that create your feelings. And so I see the power in talking about an event in a way that enables you to neutralize it so that you can then move away from it from an emotional perspective. But I always then feel like, and please tell me if I am off or wrong on this, not that there is any right or wrong, but I then feel like we're still putting the event as the problem and the issue, whereas actually
Mm,
it's our thinking around it. And to me, that is so very powerful because, especially something that's in the past, we can't go back and change that event. So then, if it's that event that makes us vulnerable or pain, whatever, we can't go back and change it. So then we're helpless. But in the present moment and going forward, we can change our thoughts about it. So then we're powerful.
yeah.
So that's the only other thing that I feel is quite a significant difference. Although I see the benefit of neutralizing it first, but to me, the root cause of the problem is always our thoughts about it and what we make that event mean about ourselves today.
Yes, yes. No, that makes a lot of sense to me as well. I think it's there. There is the event, but part of the process of engaging in talking about it and the impact it's had
Yeah.
on us is to get a bit more distance and to understand, oh, that's what happened then, but now I have choices.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and interesting, like I mean, you said that probably I know more about the brain, but in fact, actually, my training was, mainly in the kind of early part of the 2000s, and it was like neuroscience has just come on so much since. So that
Yes.
actually, you know, that wasn't a huge part of my training,
Is it
actually. The
not?
training I
Yeah.
did was very experiential,
Yeah.
you know, bits of a skeleton of theory and then lots of practice and doing. So to really develop that way of developing in the relationship in the
Mm.
room with people. Um, so yeah, I'm not a huge expert on the brain actually,
Yeah.
but
Interesting.
interestingly, one part of my training was something called formative psychology, or it's the name isn't really great because it doesn't say what it is, but it is about working with the body. And this guy called Stanley Kellerman, he's no longer living, but he was out of California. He developed this, and it's a way of working and a way of thinking about experience where actually the body shapes our experience. And so
Yes.
if we can learn to influence like the particular shape we make with our body, like
Yeah.
okay, like hunching shoulders, that will produce a certain
Yeah.
experience
Yes.
with certain thoughts and certain feelings. And then, but we can use that prefrontal cortex in an exercise to then influence the shape of our bodies and then
Yeah.
realize, oh, this is how I can undo this pattern, say, of having the
Yeah.
shoulders up by my ears or something.
Yes. Yeah.
And then that influences our experience.
Yeah.
So that it's kind of similar to what you're talking about, I think.
Mm. Mm.
Um, I mean, thoughts are produced by the body anyway. You know, it's
Yeah.
we talk about mind and body, but
I
really,
know, but it is all one.
it's yeah,
We
exactly.
forget that they are attached. There is like
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
flow through the neck.
yeah, yeah,
And it is interesting, and I also really think, and I feel like I'm coaching more and more on this at the moment, is that we sometimes can't think our way out of a situation initially. We have to just let ourselves feel our way out of it. And for those of us that are more kind of logical and thought based, and I'm like, we can get to that, but not until you've realized that this heightened emotion is harmless and it's safe to release,
yeah,
then we can get back to the thinking. But
yeah,
there are times when we can't think our way out of it. We have to feel our way out of it, and that is all down in the body. And there are many ways to do that, aren't there? But yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting that you said that. Do you know Tony Robbins
I know. Yeah,
of him?
I've seen him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Seen some of his
Um,
stuff.
so he's quite huge in the self-development world. Whether you like him or not is kind of irrelevant. But that's one of the things he teaches is like using your body to influence the mind. So creating that kind
Mm,
of superhero stance, that, right, okay, if I was feeling really self-confident, I would be sat up, my shoulders would be back, my head would be up, and instantly that starts to create that emotion that then influences the mind into believing that it's possible to feel. Because
yeah.
I've experienced this for myself, and I have a number of clients who are really frightened about feeling successful. They have a fear about
Yeah.
feeling excited, or they have a fear of feeling, those overly joyous emotions because they're unfamiliar. And anything that's unfamiliar, the brain is going to try and avoid because it literally thinks
Yeah.
it's going to kill us. Whereas we're like, no, no, no. Success, the emotion of success, the emotion of self-confidence, joy, love, that is the most life-enhancing emotion. We don't need to be frightened of it. But because we've
Mm.
not practiced that either, um, it can be scary for the brain and the body to go into that unfamiliar place.
Totally. Yeah. It totally makes sense. And it's kind of like, as you know, when you sort of push your limit of your comfort zone, there
Yeah.
is that kind of heightened sense of like that part that's trying to protect us going, oh,
Mm.
danger, danger, danger. But yeah,
Yeah.
when we step into it, it's a completely different thing. And I had a question for you and now I've forgotten it. But anyway,
Oh,
maybe
it'll come back in a minute.
menopausal brain, I love it. So
I know, I know. It's so funny,
hopefully it
isn't
will
it?
come back.
Yeah. I think anybody that listens to me regularly, they know I go, "But what was I talking about? It'll come back in a minute."
Yeah, yeah,
It's just one of those gorgeous parts of our evolution, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
So what's your preferred way of actually working with people, Bonnie?
Um, oh, now I've got a frog.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
gonna have a
Have
sip.
a little sip of tea or whatever you have. I have hot water in my cup.
Yeah, I've got some this morning. I've got green tea.
Mm.
Green tea with jasmine, which used to be
Ooh.
something I drank every day, and then more recently I don't have caffeine very much at all. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love jasmine. Mm.
Yeah. Nice.
Um, so I'm still, and that's still bugging me that I've forgotten the question that I was going to ask you. I hope it does come back. Anyway, we'll see. I might just
Yeah.
have to come on another time and have another conversation about something else.
Well, we were talking about Tony Robbins and we were talking about feeling successful and holding your body up in a way that feels enables you to influence the thinking of success and being familiar with those positive emotions as well as being okay with negative ones. Does that trigger
Yes.
anything?
Not
No.
at the
Question's
moment.
gone.
Damn it. Damn it.
If it comes back, I'll
Yep.
answer it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, how do I prefer to work with people? It so varies on the person. Like I've talked about this particular way of working with body awareness, but that's kind of not for everyone, and it's not everyone's starting point. I mean, some people just have not really, they're not starting with much body awareness, and so it can feel a bit like a foreign language. Anyway, so
Yeah.
it's all about, kind of like you said, you have no plan particularly for your podcast. It's like I don't necessarily have a plan either. It's and that's why that kind of first initial session is so important, because at least I'm starting to get a sense of who this person is and what I think they might need, and um, what's going to work. Like, what are the aims? They always bring what they want for themselves. So I'm taking that, but I'm also kind of probably having my own thoughts about, oh, actually, I can see that this might be getting in the way, so we need to tackle
Yeah.
that. But it's very much evolving, and sometimes it's mainly through conversation. Again, I think sometimes a stereotype of counseling is that it's a lot of nodding, earnest nodding, and going, "Oh, mm-hmm, mm-hmm," and reflecting back what you've heard and all that. And those things are important, but again, for me, I enjoy being much more interactive. Like it's much more of a conversation, and um, yeah. So I'll have questions. I'll have kind of particular ways of framing things that I might bring in, or bits and pieces of knowledge or awareness, things I might notice are happening in their body.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what are your fingers saying? Somebody will be going
Yeah.
like that. It's like, oh, those fingers want to say something. What's going on
Yeah.
there? So sometimes it might be a structured exercise or something we do. Um, it's really interesting. Yesterday, in two of my sessions, I had something pop into my head that was like, oh, I really want to check in with people, what's going on in their body, and I don't always get that.
Mm.
And we kind of, in both cases, it was really interesting. Like we were working from, okay, what's the position? What's your kind of experience now? I had them name it in a word, and make a kind of pose to go with it, and then I just kind of had them each do a little shift of that position, and then describe, okay, well, what's different now and what's possible from this place. And but I don't, that that just, for whatever reason, that was the zone I was in yesterday.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's always the way I work, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's so I'm my next sort of phase of evolution from my coaching perspective, well, and my also self-development perspective is really opening up to that spiritual world and that kind of deep sense that we can get sometimes when we're talking to someone. And it's interesting, isn't it? When you're just like I quite often will just have this kind of I don't know thought or sense drop in. I don't quite know how to articulate this feeling yet. I'm
Hmm.
still becoming familiar with it myself, but I'll just be like, okay, I'm kind of sensing that dot dot dot, or I feel like I need to ask this question, and then I'll ask it. I'll trust that intuition, and I'll ask it, and then boom, that's when we get to the root, like
Mm.
the root cause of the issue, which is a thought or something that they're making it mean. And it's incredible when you say I've got, I just have that, oh, I wonder if um it is fascinating how we have that kind of however you want to like for me it's like source or the
Mm.
universe. You can label it God if you want to, like whatever, however you connect to a higher energy than us. We are being guided by those kind
Mm.
of senses.
Well, and sometimes I think I remember having a really interesting conversation about intuition in one of my psychotherapy courses. I mean, this was years ago, but it still stayed with me
Yeah.
about how, well, actually, maybe intuition is actually kind of intelligence we have, but we're just not aware of it. You know,
Yeah.
that
Totally
really,
love that.
that extreme, I mean, not extreme in a bad way, but positive sensitivity
Yeah.
that we're actually picking up things that
Yeah.
some part of us isn't necessarily making sense of,
Yeah.
but we're just, like you say, trusting and going with. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting, really interesting.
I love that. I'd never
Yeah,
thought of it as a, I mean, it makes perfect sense now you said it. Like that intuition is just like a higher wisdom that we haven't tapped, or higher intelligence that we just haven't tapped into. And I'm like, ooh, it gets me really curious.
yeah,
Gets me really
yeah,
curious.
yeah. I bet. I mean, I can totally imagine that when you work with people, you know, especially the more and more that you're trusting those senses, it's like yeah, when you feel that you're really getting to something that's, like you say, the nub of it. Like those are such exciting moments, aren't they? It's like, you know, there's so much potential in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's
mm,
exciting for me to help build
yeah,
up that, like, make my client aware that that could be what's happening. But that can be very uncomfortable for the client. I mean, I always
yeah,
think we know that all of that's in us. We've just blocked it somewhere. So I don't ever think it's a huge, it's a revelation in the sense that we're now aware of it, just like we've turned the light on. But we always sort of kind of knew it was there. We just maybe weren't able to articulate it. But it's for the
mm,
client. And I know when I've got coached and gone through that myself, it's not that awareness necessarily isn't comfortable to begin with,
no,
but having a willingness, and this is why I think everybody needs some form of support, whether it's life coaching or counseling or psychotherapy. It doesn't matter who you choose. And I think the client, like we said before we came on, will instinctively know just by having those
mm,
conversations and meeting those different people, they will know what they need. Um, but oh, hang on, I've lost my chain of thought. Let me just go back to it a second. Um, but that discomfort of that awareness, once you move through it,
mm,
the other side is powerful and peaceful and a release, actually. So it's like we have to go through this messy middle to come out the other side.
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes total sense. And there's something that I've just remembered that is, again, sometimes something I bring into sessions where I call it my twinkle in the eye therapy. So it might
Oh
be
yeah.
kind of giving people a little bit of a challenge. And sometimes it might just be saying a certain statement.
Mm.
Like if the idea of saying like I am worthy is too big, like too big to kind of even contemplate,
Yeah.
then okay, like how would it be to consider that possibly
Yeah.
you are worthy, you know,
Yeah,
and that
I'm willing to consider. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Or
that
one
that
of my favorites is I'm learning how to
yeah,
believe I might be worthy. Or yes, I'm willing to learn. It's that little, you need to just soften it a little bit so that the body can get on board with it. And then we just
yeah,
move forward inch by inch.
yeah. But even that little step,
Yeah, it's
you know, I'm
huge.
just thinking of a particular client, you know, I was
Yeah.
working with one time where it was just like that was
Yeah.
just huge.
Yeah. Because no one ever tells us, Bonnie, we have a choice, do they? No one ever says to us,
No,
do you know you get to choose what you believe about your thinking? Like your brain's going to give you, like, what is it, 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day
it's,
on
I know
average?
you said that a few weeks ago, and that stayed with me. Actually, I've said that to a few of my clients as well.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm sure
yeah,
it's
yeah,
from Dr. Joe Dispenza, but yeah,
mm,
the average human has 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. So we can't possibly be on top of all of that thinking. But then this one sentence comes in, oh, you're not good enough, Nikki, or you can't do that, you're not clever. And that one, boom, that one must be true. And so, but
mm,
so having that willingness to just go, well, if so, this one of the things that I practice a lot, especially with the I'm not clever enough, is I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So if that wasn't true, brain, I
mm.
call my primal brain Sue. If that wasn't true, Sue, what would
Nice.
I do differently? And then I'm like, well, I would go and ask. well, now it's ChatGPT. Before it would have been Google. But I'm like, I'm going to go and ask ChatGPT, or I'm going to go and ask YouTube, or if they don't know, Pinterest always does. So it's like I
Nice.
will figure it out. So I don't believe we can ever stop that
Mm,
conditioning, those initial responses,
yeah.
and then I think I don't know much about. I haven't trained in any form of personality profiling. I've been exposed to some of it, but that's when I think our personality traits, the initial reaction comes in. But once we're aware of that, then we can catch ourselves and very
Yes.
consciously choose something different. And no one tells us we can do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm totally on the same page with you about that. It's like people sometimes want to never feel that way again or have that
Yeah.
thought again. And I say, well, if it's been with you for so many years, let's work on what's realistic. Like you
Yeah.
say, that initial reaction, but it's the layers that we build after that
Yes.
that actually make the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
say to my clients, I'm like, okay, so how many years have you had anxiety? Oh my gosh, like my whole life. And I'm like 45. I'm like, okay, and you're not dead. And they're
Yeah.
suddenly
Yeah.
like, so anxiety's harmless. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Our negative, what may be uncomfortable, but harmless in the sense that they can't kill us. And then when we're not frightened of our negative emotions, we don't need to be worried
Mm.
if they show up.
Yeah. It's
And
like,
that's it.
oh yes, here's this fear again.
Yeah, here's
Hello.
self-doubt, my
Yeah.
best friend
Yeah,
coming along to
exactly.
try and protect me. Yeah.
Constant companion is a phrase I've once heard, I
Yes.
think, in one of the groups I was in. I really like that. It's like they asked all of us, who's your constant companion?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. So brilliant.
Oh, great.
So, do you work with people virtually as well as in person?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I
Because
do
you're
see
based in
I'm in Stroud in
Proud.
Gloucestershire. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple of days a week I have access to an office, so I do work with some people face to face, which I really love. I love
Yeah.
having the flexibility, to be honest, like
Yes.
doing the online and some of the online, and then also some face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think something else that occurred to me, thinking about psychotherapy or counseling for that matter, that's kind of popped into my head. It feels like possibly from some part of the conversation we were having a bit ago, but
Yeah. No, tell
uh,
me.
was that I think again in my experience, like when I've had therapy, which would be I would consider it to have been psychotherapy, it's it's been able to go quite deep and to take time, but also it's not just been about processing kind of past events. It's actually really supported me well to deal with things in the present,
Yes.
and kind of grow new ways of responding to some of that, the kind of everyday life
Yes.
challenges.
Yeah.
So I know for me that's just been really valuable over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I love it. I love it so much. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is relevant?
Mm. Um, well, I think in the very beginning I mentioned something about how I think a lot depends on, what I mean, what is the right fit for people
Mm.
is I think regardless of the label, is it counseling or psychotherapy or coaching or whatever, I think it's a lot is down to the individual person,
Yes.
like
Yes.
how they are as a human, how they are
Yeah.
as a human in their professional kind of capacity. And I'm not great at quoting research, but I know I've read things that say so much is dependent on the kind of relationship that you end up building with the person.
Yes.
So
100%.
as long as that feels like a good fit, to my mind, in some ways, the label is less important. I mean, obviously, it
Yes.
depends on what people want to get out of something, but
Yeah.
um,
I love that
it's,
you've said that, Bonnie, because it
yeah,
really does. I think whoever you choose to support you, like you say, regardless of the label, you have to have that connection energetically. I think even if you can't
yeah,
articulate it, you might not be aware of it, but you will just know, yes, Bonnie's my sort of person. Yes, Nikki's my sort of person. Or actually, I just want to go and talk to this other psychotherapist and this other life coach. And you will know, having spoke to a few people, you will
Mm,
get a sense of what's right for you, regardless of whether they say it's coaching, counseling, mentoring, or all the other terminologies that we can put on it these days. And I just think,
exactly.
I think what you said is 100%. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, what do I need counseling? Do I need psychotherapy? Do I need coaching? Just come and chat to some of us because
Yeah.
we're normal
Yeah,
humans.
exactly, exactly. We aren't going to be, I mean, I get this like in social situations. Like, I don't know if you get this, Nikki, but people are like, oh, I'm a psychotherapist, and they kind of there's this pause, and I can almost feel like, oh God, she must be analyzing me, and it's like,
Yeah,
no,
yes.
hello, I am a human being here.
I'm only analyzing myself right now because that's what all humans do.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's plenty right now.
I know,
Because
so much
because I
fun.
think thinking back, my first experience of counseling was at uni when I had issues with compulsive eating and procrastinating and not doing my papers, and I was really struggling, and I went for counseling at the university, and the person said very little. They very occasionally had kind of interpretations or something, observations that they made or questions or whatever. And yes, it was helpful. There were things I got out of it, but ultimately it was like I just felt like I was there being examined. I
Mm.
didn't feel I was relating to a human being across from me. So I'm sure that led to me training in the way that I did, in the
Yeah,
place that I did, because it was just like, oh no, I don't, no, that's
I don't want to do that.
no, exactly.
Yes.
That was not friendly enough,
Yeah.
or human
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I think coming back to what we said about doing our own work ourselves and having coaching and having like psychotherapy ourselves is that um we then have that understanding of what it's like to go through the process, which instantly makes us more human about it, right?
Yeah.
If, I mean, I don't mean to sound judgmental when I say it, but if you're going to someone and they don't do it themselves, it's kind of like when you go to the doctor about weight loss and the doctor's giving you advice and they're overweight and you're looking at them
Yes.
thinking, how the fuck do you know?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
clearly you don't
Exactly.
believe what you're telling me because you
Exactly.
would be,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like that, isn't it? And so I think, but again, it comes back to then I don't believe that everyone has to have gone through what you've gone through, but they
Mm.
have to have experienced the process of looking internal and dealing internally,
Yeah.
and I think that shows then in someone's session, regardless of the label that's attached to it.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Makes a lot of sense.
Amazing.
Yeah. Lovely.
So I will put all of Bonnie's links below so that you can connect with her if you feel called to. I mean, and if
Okay.
you get
Yeah.
a
Thank you.
chance, do watch this on YouTube because it's because of Bonnie's hair. I saw so many women with such gorgeous grey hair that was then what spurred me to let my all of mine start growing out and coming through like
Yay.
6 years ago. So the fact that we both have beautiful hair, beautiful grey, and that we're wearing purple.
Yeah. Not planned. Not
No,
planned,
it was
folks.
not at
Definitely
all.
not
Not
planned.
at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
thank you so much for coming and talking to me today. What a beautiful way to start the working day, being
You.
inspired by this conversation.
Oh. Thank you.
And
it's been fab.
yeah, if you remember that question, if it pops up later, probably tomorrow morning in the shower, because that's what usually happens. Oh, I could have said this or I could have said that. Let me know
Yeah.
what it was, and I'll do a whole episode just on that.
Okay.
That
Okay.
one question that Bonnie wanted to ask.
That I've totally forgotten. We'll
No,
see
we've
if it
totally
comes back.
forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it will if it was a good one. Thank you so much for joining me today, Bonnie. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Blah.
Thanks.